Big news on and off the field last night. I am Ken Rosenthal here with Alanna Rizzo. This is the Thursday edition of Fair Territory. But before we get into all that, we are going to announce a special edition of Fair Territory tomorrow at 11 a.m. Me and Joey Votto chewing the fat, going over his career. It's going to be great. Joey, of course, is one of the best interviews in the sport. Alanna, really looking forward to that.
I love Joey Votto, Ken Rosenthal, almost as much as I love you. The man is a two-nation treasure. I cannot believe he's no longer playing, but I believe he's going to be in a broadcast booth soon. I can't wait to see the Fair Territory tomorrow. 3 this week. That's a big deal. And you mentioned some big things happening on the field. Ken, I would not have had, as we get into the lead, I would not have had a September 2024 Scott Boras signing in season.
Alanna, I sure didn't have it on my bingo card either, and it is a rarity for a Boras client this close to free agency to agree to a long-term deal, but these circumstances are a little bit different, and let's go through them. One, Matt Chapman is happy in San Francisco. He's reunited with two of his guys from the A's. Of course, I'm talking about Bob Melvin, the manager, Matt Williams, the third base coach. He's comfortable. He went through a long, protracted offseason last year, did not sign until March 3rd. So here's a guy saying, you know what? I'm happy. I'm comfortable. Scott, let's go. And Scott Boras, for his part, as I wrote this morning in The Athletic, this is going to be his story, in my estimation. And he has a lot of other free agents: Juan Soto, Corbin Burns, Pete Alonso, Alex Bregman. This particular move clears the decks for Bregman. He is now the big third baseman available, doesn't have to compete with Chapman. Scott Boras has told me in the past that he likes having a lot of players at one position because he has all the information on what the teams want, but certainly this shapes up very well. Matt Chapman does great. And if you go back to the original deal with the Giants, that was 3 years, $54 million with 2 player options. So add the 2 guarantees together, 1 year, 18, which is what he's playing for this year, and 6 years, 151, you get 7 years, $169 million. That is a great outcome for Matt Chapman, who is having one of his best years. If you remember, Chris Bryant, Alanna, was 7 years, $182 million. Now, that's a few years back. I get it. And Matt Chapman maybe is not considered as highly as Bryant was then. But for Matt Chapman, great outcome. For Scott Boras, this will be the first of many.
Let me ask you this, Ken. How much perhaps was the conversations or the talk that Blake Snell was having, Jordan Montgomery happening, perhaps that they just weren't pleased with the way that things went in the offseason to kind of make Scott Boras say, you know what, let's do this in season? I know it's all about Matt Chapman, what he feels comfortable with, but is there anything to be said about the disappointment perhaps that Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery expressed?
It's an interesting question, Alanna, and I'm sure it'll come up at the news conference today that they're going to have at Oracle Park. Scott Boras probably will say that last year was a depressed market. It wasn't on him. I would counter that by saying Glasnow did well, Yamamoto did well, Aaron Nola did well. It wasn't that depressed for other players. But whatever, we've had that argument. We don't need to have it again. Bottom line is, 2018-19, he had an amazing offseason, and he was coming off an offseason kind of like this one, where there were some questions raised. I wrote some things. Others might have asked some questions too. And he came out that offseason and he dominated starting at the winter meetings, which is relatively early in the offseason. It was Cole, it was Rendon, it was Strasburg. So I don't know that he would acknowledge this is a change in strategy, but clearly he wants to keep his client happy here. His client probably wasn't all that happy last offseason. And as I said, it's a win. And it's also a win. We should note this. This is really important for the San Francisco Giants. Mm-hmm. Here is a team that has had difficulty signing the biggest free agents. And they did a little bit better last offseason, of course. They nabbed some big players at the end. And, of course, they got the center fielder as well from Korea. But at the same time, they struck out on Judge. We know the whole situation. They struck out on Correa after they declined to execute the contract because of his physical. Here's a guy who wants to be in San Francisco. He's a really good player. He is an outstanding defender and hitter. Here's a guy that you want long-term. They got him, and now they become, in my estimation, more attractive for other players that they're going to consider this offseason. Pitchers will look at it and say, hey, this guy's playing third base. I'm happy. Hitters might say, okay, here's an anchor of the lineup. We're good.
Couldn't agree more. Good for Matt Chapman. He's a heck of a player, a great defensive third baseman. Take it. I never fault the player. If you don't like what they're making, think of what the owners are making. So congratulations to Matt Chapman and to Scott Boras for getting this deal done. I would like to know, Ken, as we shift our focus here, what your opinion is on combined no-hitters. I've been a part of a couple of them. I'm sure you have too in person in your tenured career. The Chicago Cubs, congratulations, 3 pitchers threw a combined no-hitter last night. What is your take on the whole thing? Do they count as much? Do they matter?
Oh, they certainly matter. It's a great achievement to get through a game without allowing a hit. There's no doubt about that. I know the Brian Kennys of the world don't think it's that big a deal to throw a no-hitter. Wrong, Brian, you're wrong. Forget it. Now, is it the same kind of meaning as a single pitcher no-hitter? Absolutely not. And I think any pitcher would be the first to tell you that. But in this era that we're in, Alanna, we're going to see more of these, and we're going to see fewer actual single pitcher no-hitters. We've only seen 3 this season. Ronel Blanco, Dylan Cease, and Blake Snell. So with pitch counts so prominent, with guys not going deep into games as they once did, these are going to be perhaps more common. And certainly for the Cubs last night, this was the cap to Imanaga's tremendous rookie season. He has done everything they could have asked. If you look at his season and you break it down, and I thank our producer Jeremy Meyer for pointing this out, he has had 2 bad starts. 2. That's it. The other 25 or so have been brilliant. And if not for Paul Skeens and Jackson Merrill and Jackson Churio, he would be a strong Rookie of the Year candidate. You look at it right there. 24 starts, 2.10 ERA, and 146 innings. 2 starts, these were against the Mets and the Brewers, a 20.87 ERA and 7 1/3. So that's why his ERA is not down in the low 2s like Skeens. He just had 2 blow-up starts. So he's had an amazing season. This last night was just a great climax and finale to what he has already accomplished. Kudos to him and the other 2 pitchers as well. Because Nate Pearson came over in a trade at the deadline. It was one of those buy trades that they made for the future. He's a bullpen piece that they believe is going to be right there with them. And the third pitcher, Porter Hughes, am I getting his
Porter
name?
Hodge. Porter Hodge.
Porter Hodge, I'm sorry.
Hodge, yeah.
Porter Hodge, forgive me, Porter. 13th round pick in 2019. He's had a really good season this year. And again, forgive me for forgetting your name in the heat of the moment live here. But hey, he's been a success story for them as well. So this was a really good night for the Cubs. Frankly, they could have used it a couple of nights before against the Pirates rather than lose these couple of games to start the series. But good for the Cubs.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that Shota Imanaga, Ken, is the best off-season signing, not named Shohei Ohtani, not named Teoscar Hernandez?
I would say he is the best value among the free agents that signed last offseason. And I'm not counting the 1-year deals. If you count the 1-year deals, some of them have been amazing. Jurickson Profar, 1 year, $1 million. Jack Flaherty, 1 year, $14 million. Severino, 1 year, $13 million. Manaea for the Mets was a great signing at 2 years, $28 million. There's the list right there. Imanaga was 4 years, $53 million. And a lot of people questioned it. A lot of people said, we're not so sure it will translate well here, but it's translated great. Jock Peterson, another great 1-year signing for the Diamondbacks, 1 year at $9.5 million. So certainly from a value perspective, he has given them everything they could have wanted. It's different than Ohtani. Ohtani's $700 million. I don't know that you can say it's the same value. And it's even different from Teoscar, who's at $23.5 million for 1 year. Great season for him, no question. But at the same time, Imanaga has exceeded all expectations and performed in a really big way.
Yeah, Shohei Ohtani is a one-man industry. I'm not sure we'll ever really be able to quantify what Shohei Ohtani means to an organization. By the way, a lot of Cubs talk, a lot of Shota Imanaga talk, new Northside Territory podcast. It is out now. It is a fresh podcast about Imanaga and last night's no-hitter. Patrick Mooney and Sahadev Sharma host. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. We are going to be right back here on Fair Territory after this quick word from AJ Pierzynski, Eric Kratz, and Scott Braun.
Pop quiz, AJ. What's America's #1 meal kit?
That would be HelloFresh, Scott, and it even works for picky eaters like you. There's an ever-changing menu of 50 recipes to choose from each week. So just select your meals and delivery date, and voila!
Home-cooked meals just hit different.
Agreed. With FT every day and my coaching job, I don't have time to search recipes all night and also spending money on a whole jar of spices for only a pinch. Nah, I'm good. My family gets more of me because I don't have to take a last-minute trip to the grocery store at night to find dinner.
Ready for this? For free breakfast for life, go to hellofresh.com/free FT. One free breakfast item per box while subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life just by going to hellofresh.com/FREEFT.
Ken, can you imagine more time with Eric Kratz? I love that he's not running to the grocery store to get, last minute dinner items or seasonings, but more family time with Kratz. I'm not so sure that Mrs. Kratz appreciates HelloFresh, but that's neither here nor there. It is time now for Grillin Ken. Make sure that you load up all of your questions. It's not often you get to talk to a guy like Ken Rosenthal about what you have. Armand, do the Giants re-sign Snell if he opts out? What do you think about that? They already cornered, with Matt Chapman. Why not start building from there?
Very obvious question by Armand and a good one. I'm not sure we can equate Snell and Chapman. And the reason is, we talked about this earlier. Chapman had some roots with some of the people who were with the San Francisco Giants, had been with the Oakland A's, previously Bob Melvin and Matt Williams, even Farhan Zaidi. So it's a different scenario with Snell, who did not have the same connections. Granted, he played for Melvin last year, but it wasn't as deep a relationship. It couldn't have been. It wasn't as long. So I expect Snell in particular is going to want to crush the market this winter. Now, you can make the case that Chapman just did. He did really well, $25 million a year for 6 years. But I would think Snell wants to be a free agent again and wants to max out in the way that he did not last year. So I think the Giants certainly have a chance, but at the same time, it's going to be a free-for-all for him. And it's a very interesting pitching market because Corbin Burns has been the top guy, the guy that I still expect to do really well, perhaps even top 200 million. But he's had a bad August. For what that's worth, it's 1 month out of his whole career. I don't know that it's worth anything. But he did in August struggle, came back a little bit in his last start against the White Sox. It's the White Sox. So we'll all be watching that closely. And Snell, again, has had this brilliant finish to his season after kind of a weird start, right? He signed late, he got hurt, there were things going on, and heck, he even had a baby during that period. So that was a little bit hectic for Blake Snell. I would expect he's going to want to really crush the market if he can.
Let me ask you this about expectations for Snell, Ken. What about the way things went for him last offseason? Obviously, having to start late with a late signing, basically spring training well after the regular season has started for other players. Will he sign on time if the money isn't there, just kind of learning from this offseason's experience, or do you think he'll push the envelope again?
I would certainly expect that he is going to want to do this quicker than he did last year, just as Chapman did. That's a reasonable desire for him. Now, he will say, Scott Boras will say, the market will dictate, right? If we don't get the right offers, we're not going to sign. And last year, we did not get the right offers. Teams would suggest that they were asking for too much money. Again, this is an argument that we can go all day with. At the same time, I expect the market for Snell to be better because, granted, he was coming off his second Cy Young last offseason, but my goodness, he did it again this year. Again, finished the season brilliantly. I don't know what more he has to prove. Granted, he's a year older, but assuming the market bounces back a little bit, and we had some things going on with regional television uncertainty last year, we might have that again this year, but I still expect him to do really well, much better than he did last offseason.
All right, we continue with Grillin Ken here on Fair Territory. Another pitching question for you, Ken. Would you rather have Shota Imanaga or would you rather have Yoshinobu Yamamoto? This question from Alex. And we're talking about right now, not in the future, right now.
Alex, the question's complicated. If you're ignoring the contracts, I'd still rather have Yamamoto. He's younger. He's a guy still with a world of potential in Major League Baseball. He's someone that every team was slobbering over last offseason, and I don't think they were all wrong. So I know he's been hurt, and I know we haven't seen that much of him, but the glimpses we've seen, and Alanna, you know this better than anyone, there have been serious flashes of brilliance. So Imanaga, yes, he's great, but I'd rather have Yamamoto because of the age.
All right, Yamamoto is going to be making a start here for the Los Angeles Dodgers, so they're going to forego any more rehab and get him on the hill in a big league game. Let me ask you this, though, just right now on the 1 month that you've seen of him, is he a $325 million pitcher?
I don't know the answer to that, and certainly the injury complicated it. In the few months we did see, I would say yes, he
Okay.
was that guy. He was good and he was getting better. And that start against the Yankees at Yankee Stadium was one of the more electric starts I can remember seeing, period. It was Pedro-esque for me.
Hmm.
So I don't know that anybody's going to be worth that kind of money. We talk about this all the time. But in terms of what he can provide over the course of his career in his prime years, I would expect it's going to be pretty good.
Oh my goodness, the Dodgers need a good, healthy starting pitcher as they continue to make their way to the postseason because there's still a ton of question marks there. Cosmic Things, welcome back. Ken Rosenthal, it's official. Red Sox season is over. Do you think Craig Breslow is going to trade the plethora of rising prospects for pitching? And thoughts on Baseball America having Roman Anthony as their number 2 prospect?
Roman Anthony is one of their top prospects. Marcelo Myers, another one. Teal is the third. They've got these 3 guys at up the middle positions or prominent positions, and they are really confident in them. They're not going to trade them. I would be shocked if the Red Sox traded one of their so-called big 3. Will all 3 of those players be stars? That remains to be seen, but they're really high on all of them, and Anthony being number 2 is a testament to how far he has come. Marcelo Myers been the guy. Kyle Teal's been really discussed too. He's a catcher, but Anthony is a guy now, obviously, getting a little bit more attention. So where do they go from here? They do need more pitching. They do need an ace. They do need some help in the bullpen as well. But what has happened here over the last several weeks, the reason they have sputtered is that they haven't hit. And that's the alarming part. Now, Trevor Story will be back next year. Tristan Casas presumably an entire season. So you've got some better pieces in place, but they need more. And I would suggest that they understand that they need more. What's interesting to me, and I wrote about this today in the Windup, the Athletics Daily Baseball newsletter, each of the last 3 seasons, Alanna, they've staggered to the finish line. It has not been good. Mm-hmm. So they've got to figure out a way to win games late in the season, too. That's something that they have not been able to do each of the past 3 years.
They need to figure out how to finish strong, Ken. They also need to spend some money and act like the Boston Red Sox used to in previous times, because this is a team that has a fan base that will not tolerate anything less. Again, continue with the questions here for Grillin Ken as we ask you this from Walter Emmon. With the rash of pitching injuries, do you think the market will trend toward the premium position players getting the longer-term deals? This sort of extension for Chapman seemed far-fetched last year. That's a great question, Walter.
It is a great question, but Walter, I would suggest that the market for starting pitchers will be as fervent as ever. And the reason is there are so few of them. It's simple supply and demand. We do not have big-time workhorse starters the way we once did. For that reason, Corbin Burnes is an exception. He's a guy who goes deep into games. He is a guy who has done it repeatedly. Snell is a little bit different, but he's a guy capable of pitching 180 innings too. So I expect they're going to do well. I expect Manaea will do well, presuming that he opts out. Severino going back into the market. And there are some others as well that I'm sure I'm missing. Jack Flaherty, of course. He's a free agent. These guys will be in demand because pitching is at such a premium.
At such a premium, and as a good starting pitcher, as you mentioned, Ken, guys that can go deep into ball games, that you know that you basically have either a stopper on your team or a guy that can extend that winning streak. There are so few and far between, which we're going to get to that, by the way, coming up in our Dude and our Dork segment. So continue with the questions coming in here for Grillin Ken. A reminder that we also have a third Fair Territory tomorrow with Joey Votto joining Ken Rosenthal. So this question for you: the NL rookies get most of the attention, but who do you see as front runners for AL Rookie of the Year?
I see Colton Cowser from the Orioles being the front runner, but it's kind of open. Wilyer Abreu for the Red Sox has had a really good year. Mason Miller for the A's. I'm sure I'm missing some. Forgive me for that. But the NL race is a lot more interesting. The NL race is really fascinating. It's Skeens. It's Imanaga to a lesser extent. It, of course, is Jackson Merrill, who had another big night last night, another home run, and Jackson Chourio, who has been on fire like Merrill since around June 1st. I think we have an interesting graphic here that we can show about NL rookies and how they are performing relative to their league, the top NL rookies. I'm talking about Skeens, Imanaga, Merrill, and Chourio. Basically, this shows you ERA plus and OPS plus. These are numbers relative to the rest of the league, so how they're performing relative to their peers. And Paul Skeens is at 98% above league average as a starting pitcher, ERA plus. Imanaga 37% above league average. Merrill and Churio, lesser numbers, and OPS plus 28% above league average for Merrill, Churio 19% above. So what does this tell us? It tells us that Skeens has been the most dominant guy. Okay, I get that, and I understand that. I just wonder if voters, of which I am not one this year in that particular category, will value the everyday up-the-middle position players,
Right.
both of which Churio and Merrill are, over the starting pitcher who has thrown 114 innings, probably will finish, I don't know, 130, 140. Skeens has been amazing, there's no doubt, but this is a really interesting apples and oranges question, and I'm sorry to the person who asked the question, but it's more interesting than the AL race.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Let's pretend you do have a vote because I'm with you. I think Jackson Merrill, in my opinion, should be the National League Rookie of the Year, just based on the fact that the kid has come up in such clutch situations, really game-changing situations, and he is an everyday impact player. While Paul Skeens, out of the four, proves to be most dominant statistically, he can only win a game or help win a game every fifth day. So if you were voting in the National League Rookie of the Year category, who's your pick?
I would lean toward Merrill right now. And the season isn't over. For all we know, Skeens can do some remarkable things. Churio can. Merrill could do more. Who knows? But right now, for the reasons you stated, Alanna, the clutch performance, those home runs to go ahead or tie in the late innings, it's an incredible number for a player 21 years old. That, to me, along with what he has given that team all season, he's going to be a top 10 MVP player as well, I believe. That, to me, distinguishes him. I think the real question for me would be Skeens or Churio for number two. And that, again, is apples and oranges. It's so hard to compare. Probably would lean towards Skeens right now, but coin toss.
I had this conversation the other day with some folks over on True TV on our Race to the Pennant show, and I was talking to Jimmy Rollins and Curtis Granderson and Charles Barkley, of all people, which was odd. But I had a conversation about could a Cy Young or a pitcher rather be an MVP award candidate? And of course, position players like Jimmy Rollins and Curtis Granderson, especially J-Roll, was saying absolutely not. They have the Cy Young award, so they should not be allowed to be an MVP because they can really only impact a game every fifth day. What's your opinion on that?
Well, first of all, they are eligible for the award. It says in the instructions to voters, pitchers are eligible. Pitchers have won this award. I have not always been in favor of those particular individual cases. To me, if you're a pitcher to win that award, you really have to be out there statistically dominant. And it has to be a year where there's no hitter really doing what you would expect a normal MVP to do. It is an unusual circumstance when I believe a pitcher should win that award. But they are eligible. They do win. In some ways, relievers are more valid as MVP candidates because they perform more often. But at the same time, I'm with Jimmy for the most part. I'd rather see a position player win the award.
I agree with you as well. Before I let you go or before we move on to a dude and dork, 50-50 or a very hard defensive up the middle position player for NL MVP?
I'm still with 50-50, but Lindor is making an interesting case for himself. He is leading the Mets to a potential playoff berth. If he stays hot and they get in, this becomes a more interesting conversation because no primary DH has ever won the award. Now, no primary DH has ever run like Shohei Ohtani. If he gets to 50 homers and 50 stolen bases, even in an era when stolen bases are easier to come by, to me, it's pretty hard to deny history. And you might say, well, Lindor has carried the Mets. Hey, Mookie Betts was out a long time. Ohtani moved to the leadoff spot. He's done a lot for the Dodgers in that regard. No, he has not played defense this season, not his form of defense, which is pitching. But at the same time, he is putting himself out there offensively. And I know the two different, or the most commonly used wins above replacement metrics, Baseball Reference and Fangraphs, disagree on who is ahead. I don't worry about that because in this particular case, it's so unique and so distinct. It's a really interesting conversation. I'll say that. And it's not over yet. let's wait to see how the season plays out.
Yeah, we're going to continue to have this conversation every single day until it's actually named. And of course, we'll talk about it at length on Dodgers territory today. Myself and Clint Pasillas, we follow the foul territory crew. All right, let's have a word once again from our friends AJ Prudzinski, Eric Kratz, and Scott Braun on Anytime Fitness.
The summer gets super busy, and getting back on a good fall workout routine needs to be easy for me. With Anytime Fitness being available anytime, anywhere, they make it easy to work on getting stronger and more confident into my schedule.
Kratz is spot on. It's got to be easy to make that routine happen, and that's why we love Anytime Fitness with access to 5,000 plus well-equipped gyms open 24/7, and this is not your average gym experience. They also provide personalized coaching support that provides members the best training, nutrition, and recovery guidance, which includes the Anytime Fitness app that generates personalized workout plans and tracks your daily progress.
Get after it, FT fam. To claim your free Anytime Fitness trial pass, visit anytimefitness.com and get yours today. We'll also drop that link in the description of this episode. Check out more info and claim that free trial pass at anytimefitness.com.
Time now for Dude and Dork of the Week. This is an opportunity for Ken and I to discuss somebody that we really like to highlight in a positive way and somebody or something, organization that could do things a little bit more differently. So Ken, of course, as always, we start with you. Who's your dude?
My dude of the week is, believe it or not, the Oakland A's. And let me be specific
Excuse
about
me?
this. It's the Oakland A's, everyone below John Fisher in the organization.
Okay, that makes more
and
sense.
Maybe even Dave Kaval too. Everyone below the ownership level. The general manager, the manager, and especially the players. 25-18 since July 14th. That's the 7th best record in the majors. I know they gave it up last night, weren't so good, but that's impressive. And Lawrence Butler, folks, you might want to check out what this guy's accomplishing. Extra base hits in 14 straight games. That is a franchise record. The Oakland A's and Lawrence Butler, dudes of the week.
All right. My top performer this week is Kyle Schwarber. Very much a different type of player than Lawrence Butler is, but an exciting one all the same. The guy just rakes, Ken. And I understand that the knock on Schwarber is that sometimes he's, hitting for average around that Mendoza line. But I tell you what, he's in the mid twos right now as far as batting average is concerned. He just had his second 3-run home run game of the season. And this was in a game against the Toronto Blue Jays in which the Blue Jays can put up a 6 spot in the first inning. So Philadelphia was trailing early on. It was 6-1 in the first via a Kyle Schwarber solo shot. And then he tags on 2 more home runs. The Phillies end up winning that game 10-9. Kyle Schwarber is so good for any club. I just love his energy. I love who he is. I love what he brings to the table. He is my dude of the week. Okay, who is your dork of the week, Ken?
All right, this is a preventive act because I know AJ Prudzinski is going to be upset with me. I'm going to name myself Dork of the Week so AJ doesn't have to. And the reason I'm naming myself is I was originally expected or scheduled to work with AJ this weekend in Boston, White Sox at Red Sox. He told me all along, you're not going to be on that game. That game's beneath you. He was joking with me, etc. Well, I walk into the production truck after our broadcast last Saturday in Philly, and everybody's asking me, why are you doing that game? Why would you want to do a White Sox game and the Red Sox were fading? So I said, you know what? You guys are right. Our other game is Minnesota at Kansas City, 2 projected playoff teams. I'm going to Kansas City. AJ, I apologize, and I name myself Dork of the Week.
What is it like to be able to just kind of set your own schedule and pick the games? You're like your own flex schedule. What is that like?
I don't do it that often, and usually I work with my crew, but in this particular circumstance, the White Sox have forced my hand.
This is how it went, though. He's like, wait, AJ Prudzinski, nope, going to Kansas City, Minnesota. All right. My dork of the week happens to be Craig Counsell. And the only reason I say that is for the same reason you and I talked about when we talked about combined no-hitters. Shota Imanaga, I understand he had 95 pitches, but my goodness, he's throwing a no-hitter through 7 innings. It wasn't like he was 115 pitches. Let him see what he can do, because solo no-hitters, although not as rare as perfect games, they're still pretty special in the history of our sport. This guy is dynamic, minus the 2 clunkers that he had as far as outings are concerned. I would have liked to have seen him lose it himself. But again, congratulations to the Cubs on that combined no-hitter. But Craig Counsell, just for that reason, taking out Shota Imanaga. Not a huge dork of the week, but I really didn't have one this week. So Craig Counsell happens to be my victim, Ken. All right, what are you most excited about when it comes to talking to Joey Votto on the yet 3rd episode of Fair Territory this week?
I would say just reviewing his career and getting his insights on his performance over the years, the kind of hitter he was, and his Hall of Fame chances.
Yeah, Joey Votto again, Two Nation treasure. Such a good personality, so good for the game. It made me sad when he said he took an Uber and the Uber driver asked him if he was a ball player because he was on his way to the ballpark and he said no. That like crushed me. So looking forward to that with you tomorrow, Ken. Thanks so much, everybody, for participating in this episode of Fair Territory. Before we say goodbye, let's thank our friends at BetMGM. Let's shout them out. BetMGM First Bet, $1,500 offer when you use the bonus code FOUL. Get this offer when you download the BetMGM Sportsbook app or at BetMGM.com. Sign up, enter that bonus code FOUL, and deposit at least $10 into your new account. Place your first wager, receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. If it does lose, your bonus bets will be available once your initial wager is settled. A gambling problem or concern? There's help. Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Again, everybody, thank you for watching. Ken and I here today on Fair Territory. A brand new episode with Ken and Joey Votto airs tomorrow. Clint and I are on Dodgers territory this afternoon after Foul territory. We've got a lot of territories. We're happy that you're here. We'll see you later, Ken.
Thanks, Lana.